But let's go ahead and pull up the Every Planeswalker in Magic the Gathering definitive ranking tier list. So it would be a disservice to rank every single Planeswalker card because, you know, Nyssa has 10 cards. You know, I'm not going to rank every Nyssa to every Gideon or every Jace, etc., etc. Maybe those can be separate tier lists where I rank every Nyssa card ever made, but to keep things simple, we're going to go through every playable Planeswalker in Magic the Gathering's history based off of their character flavor and the stories that they were involved in. And honestly, this is going to be a personal opinion. You know, these are just strictly my personal opinions on where I see these Planeswalkers and their prevalence in the Magic the Gathering community. You know, that could include the cards that they've had in the past, infamous cards. You know, Oko might get a little boost in this tier list strictly because of how prevalent their card has been in the recent Magic the Gathering history. But from the most part, we're going to be looking at it from like a story character standpoint, you know, and just how much do I like that Planeswalker? That sort of deal. All right, so let's get started, guys. We are going to rank every Planeswalker playable card based off of their character and their impact to the game and the game story. Let's go. We're starting A to Z with your boy, the Leonin, Ajani Goldman. So, and it's going to take a little bit, guys, because we got a lot of Planeswalkers to suss through, all right? All right, guys, Ajani Goldman. Now, he is an OG Planeswalker, right? You got to give respect to Mr. Goldman. He is one of the founders of the Planeswalkers. He is a really cool design. He's one of the rare, you know, when they first came out with Planeswalkers, they really wanted to explore not just human Planeswalkers, they wanted to expand that and kind of explore non-human, humanoid races as Planeswalkers. We certainly in more modern days have seen it skew way more heavily towards humans, just straight up humans. So Ajani was a founder, bucking the curve a little bit. He's also been involved in some awesome storylines. He's the only Planeswalker really to take down Nicol Bolas in a one-on-one confrontation. I know it's kind of weird on the Shards of Alara, but you know, he did face down Nicol Bolas kind of on his own. And so by that, like that alone, he's been involved in so many stories, and you know he's going to continue being involved in the storyline for the foreseeable future. I don't see an end to Ajani Goldman's story. Like his impact on Magic the Gathering is deeply embedded in its history and for the foreseeable future. Honestly, I want to give him an S. He is one of those characters that brought so much to Magic the Gathering as a Planeswalker and as a character, and continues to bring more. And he's impacted strongly in every set that he appeared in. Kaladesh, the original Theros, every set that he appeared in, he played a big role in. Even in War of the Spark, that was just littered with Planeswalkers, Ajani still stood out. You know, he's a caring cat, and he makes it S on this list. Absolute unit, correct. All right, guys. Now, I always have trouble with this Planeswalker's name because it's a Commander Planeswalker, and I don't play too much Commander, although I am aware of her. But it's Aminatou, the Fate Shifted. Aminatou. All right, Aminatou. So, unfortunately, with these Commander Planeswalkers, we don't have a lot of information about them, right? They're designed to be one-off, kind of filling a niche in the Commander community sort of cards. That being said, she is a fan favorite. I do know that for a fact that people love her as a card and as a commander, and they love the design of her. So, for those who don't know, I don't even know too much about her story, honestly. I think she is some weird, like, destiny forger or something like that. And, you know, these Commander Planeswalkers, they just don't have a lot to them. And it really just won't, she won't impact the story long term. Let's just keep it like that. Let's keep it real. Let's keep it 100. We're never going to see her again. We won't see her in any major stories or anything like that. And for that, I'm sorry, but this is going to be a C tier card for me. Super playable. Very good card, mechanically speaking, especially for Commander players. I give Commander a lot of love, believe me. I might not be the best at it or know how it functions from the ground up, but I will give you guys respect. If it was for me, I think she's a D tier Planeswalker, but I will show respect to her in the Commander community. Alright, guys, now we're moving on to Angrath, one of the more modern Planeswalkers, and I say modern because they're from Ixalan, and Ixalan was one of my favorite sets of all time. It really, really, really was. I honestly can't remember a set that I enjoyed more than Ixalan outside of Lorwyn, like that block. Angrath, super awesome character, angry cow dad, comes off as an ass, but only wants to see his family again. Oh my god, and he's a pirate, he's a bull, he has fire chains, you know, he's a bull. Captain Jack Sparrow and Nicolas Cage as Ghost Rider mixed in one, you know? He's the full package. He's got a dad bod and dad energy. And he's just cool. It's a cool design. He had a lot of character development during the Ixalan storyline. A lot. It's a shame to see that he probably will never be in a story again. It really depends. Because, you know, he hightailed it off of Ixalan. He's not a native of Ixalan. He was kind of trapped there. So unless we go to his home plane, wherever that might be, we kind of thought it could have been Coldheim. Maybe. I know he opened a portal to a snowy plane to kind of show Huatli what a Planeswalker is. So still, haven't seen his home, I don't think. But if we ever do, I'm sure he will be the one to introduce us to that world. Still, super cool design for a card. Super cool design. Now, I'm gonna give him a B because while I did like him in Ixalan, and his character itself is just really cool. The fact that he doesn't have a lot of future prospects on the horizon is gonna keep him in the B range here. All right, he do just want to go home. He do just want to go home. All right, guys, Arlinn Kord. She is a werewolf. So, she likes wolves. She turns into a wolf. Yeah. She really doesn't have a lot going on for her in the story. She really, really doesn't. Outside of being a werewolf planeswalker, which is a really unique basis for a design. Interesting flavor, interesting design, but no real lore to speak of. Not really impactful to the story. Again, this feels like a C tier character. It's a C tier character to me. C's, I'm gonna reserve them for those that I think are just cool. They're a cool design, but their impact on the story of Magic, the community of Magic, is just nothing great. All right, guys, Ashiok. So Ashiok is, again, a Planeswalker with an incredibly cool design. Incredibly cool design. We don't know much about them. We know they're a nightmare mage, and they love to prey on people's fears and nightmares in general. Huge impact on kind of huge impact on the story of Theros. Just because that's where they like to spend all of their time, apparently. They were in the original Theros and then Theros Beyond Death. But that being said, Ashiok was more delegated to side stories. You know? They weren't the main dish of Theros in general. I definitely thought that Theros Beyond Death, seeing how there was no storyline whatsoever, no written articles or anything like that, is a huge downside for this character. You know, it was a whole chapter of their development that was never truly explored. Just hints and bits and pieces and nothing. Despite being cool and despite having a really interesting side story in Theros, they didn't have much of an impact. So you know where that goes. Or C tier Planeswalker. I'm sorry. Cool design, has a lot of opportunity. But huge disservice in Theros Beyond Death not having a story to further develop their character, or its character, whatever. Male, female, I don't even know what it is. I don't think it's been determined, or it should be determined. I think it's just a shadow of a Planeswalker. But them being locked to Theros, basically, except for War of the Spark, and them not even have that huge of an impact in Theros, is like Theros' stories. I gotta put them C. Alright guys, Basri Cat. So one of the Magic Core sets, we get this Planeswalker. They're a Sand Mage. They're from the plane of Amonkhet. They're a follower of Oketra before Oketra was murdered by the plague gods. You know, Nicol Bolas' henchmen. Who the heck is he? Exactly. So this guy did not have any exploration in their story whatsoever. I don't even think the set that they were released in talked about him at all. And he kind of fell off the face of the earth. I don't even think his card was used at all. So this is the type of, this is the staple for a D tier Planeswalker. This is a throwaway Planeswalker. I don't know if we'll ever see them again. I think a character like Samut that we're going to get to later from Amonkhet is way more interesting, has way more development. This character, it just seems like it was made just to be a white Planeswalker and new. That's it. Another throwaway Planeswalker. It's Calyx, aka the artificial Planeswalker created by a god to hunt other Planeswalkers. Calyx has a very cool design yet again. Being a construct of a god to hunt other Planeswalkers, it kind of throws the whole idea of what a spark is into question, right? Because by all means, Calyx is not a biological humanoid. You know what I mean? It's literally a construct created by Clothes, the god of destiny on Theros, to hunt down Elsbeth Tyrell. So Calyx's story is directly and almost unescapably tied to Elsbeth Tyrell. And while Elsbeth has just left Theros and is going to be on a different adventure, it leaves Calyx with a huge opening to come back into the story, clashing with Elsbeth Tyrell on a different world, because his job is to literally hunt them down. Interesting color combination, interesting card in general, but even in Theros Beyond Death, they didn't do a lot. He really, really didn't. He got into a few fights with Elsbeth, but Elsbeth literally kicked his ass every single time. He was getting better. So it's showing that as a character, he learns from his defeats and gets better quickly. Not just like a normal warrior would, but like as a construct of a god, he's literally designed to hunt down and track Elsbeth. So he's going to make a great like villain or counterpart, or even just a like plot device for Elsbeth in the future, maybe. But right now, he's just not a lot. Again, this is a C tier Planeswalker. And we're seeing a lot of C's. I know. Chandra Nalar. How can we not put Chandra Nalar at either S or A? So, as a character, she started off way different than where she ended off as. Her development has changed so much. Probably more so than any other character in here except for one, probably Nyssa Ravine. So Chandra's character, she started off as a fiery, like I'm talking about like super fiery, angry, frustrated, pissed off, female pyromancer who would just blow things up in at the drop of a hat. And then her development sort of peeled back a little bit to she's younger, almost with like a teenager mentality almost. She's done an adult, but she's more childlike in her mentality. But Chandra Nalar is one of those OG Planeswalkers, one of the originals, turned into a Gatewatch member, is going to be, you know, starred in their own comic book series, is going to be the focus of a Netflix series. Like, in terms of bringing something to Magic the Gathering, you cannot give me many more examples better than one Chandra Nalar. You just can't. This is an S tier Planeswalker. S tier Planeswalker. No question. Alright, rest in peace, Dak Faden's next. So, if you're a fan of comic books, you're going to rank Dak Faden way higher. If you're not, you're going to ask, who the hell is he? So Dak Faden, he is the biggest injustice in Wizards of the Coast history. He was specifically designed to push a comic book series that eventually got canceled. Canceled before its story ever was resolved. But they kind of jumped from his comic book story being unfinished to him being murdered in War of the Spark. That's it. Like, he was one of the only casualties in War of the Spark that mattered. And it was from a character who hadn't seen any action in years, and players really didn't know who he was. They tried to make his death be more emotionally impactful than it ever really could have been, because he just wasn't developed enough to the mainstream audience to warrant that sort of reaction. But those people who really, really did like Dak Faden, it didn't do anything for them either, because they didn't finish his story and they just killed him off, because it really just felt like they didn't feel like finishing his story. You know, they didn't want to explain what happened to him on Theros. They didn't want to explain how he escaped the underworld. They didn't want to explain anything about his character. They just said, just kill him. Just kill him. And then he was killed, and he was just getting killed by random mobs, essentially, you know? It was just piled on. And no one really cared, and it was bad. Yeah, he was in the War of the Spark trailer, and that was the most hype he's gonna get. It's very unfortunate. I liked him as a character. They failed his development, and that's not on him as a character. It's more on the way that Wizards of the Coast kind of handled the story. But he is a D tier Planeswalker. I'm sorry. That's going to cause a lot of people to be upset. That's going to... I know there's so many people that are Dak Faden fans, and they want him to be bigger in Magic the Gathering. He just ain't. Sorry to say it. Alright, moving on, we got ourselves another commander Planeswalker in Nihiri, the Scrap Savant. This is the goblin in a wheelchair who is good at crafting stuff, crafting artifacts. Really don't know a lot about him. Again, one of those commander Planeswalkers who's given a little bit of story. He's had a couple card redesigns, so he fares a little bit better than some of the other commander Planeswalkers, because he has shown up a couple different times. But honestly, he's not even a fan favorite to my knowledge. He is a goblin Planeswalker, which is unique, but everyone is saying F. Everyone is saying F for the goblin. And you know what? I'm going to say F. Because he is the only goblin Planeswalker. You know, if you're going to be the only one of something, you need to be a pinnacle for that something. You know what I mean? We're not going to accept the only goblin Planeswalker to be bad. All right? I'm not hating on goblins. All right? One of the first decks I ever played was a goblin tribal deck. And I had that for a long time until I switched to another short race, a Kithkin deck. So, come on. All right, guys, moving on. We have I thought was going to be a one-off kind of loser Planeswalker, but is actually a thing, Gabriel Kane. All right, so Gabriel Kane is a very strange character, right? They had a whole novella dedicated to their story and what they were doing on Innistrad, and it's kind of like this weird anti-hero. I don't know, like, how to peg this guy exactly. Because this, like, even the artwork in its cards scream evil, you know? But he's not evil. I mean, I read the novella. He's a nice guy. You know, he's kind of, like, a-hole-ish, kind of cocky, but he's cool. But in this, he literally looks like Voldemort in this. If you haven't read the novella and you just saw this card, you're like, this is Voldemort. This is one of the most evil Planeswalkers I've ever seen in my life. But he's not. He does have cool lore. A cool lore. And you know what? This is going to shock some people, but just because he's not very well known, and I do think he has potential for future lore on top of that. The fact that they went back, explored his story a little bit more, leads me to believe that he could be more involved in the story moving forward, especially if we're going back to Innistrad. We're going back to Innistrad, we could see him again on something like that. But he has the groundwork for a good story moving forward. In fact, this is Angrath level. Because I'm excited about the future. And the fact that a lot of people don't know him, but probably should know him. You need to learn his character. You need to read that novella. It was pretty good. Alright, moving on. Koth of the Hammer. This is an old school Planeswalker we have not seen or heard of for a long, long time. But boy, is he a cool character. I mean, I loved him back on the Mirrodin sets. Such a cool design as like a geomancer, you know, making his body rock and lava and all that kind of stuff. And he played a massive role in the storyline of Mirrodin. Huge. And he's still there to this day. He is a Planeswalker I guarantee you will pop up in the story when we return to New Phyrexia. 100%. He will be there. He is the last bastion of resistance against the Phyrexians on that plane. If he is not dead, which he could be, if he is not dead, he will be there as a Planeswalker in that set, leading the resistance against the Phyrexians. 100%. Also, I'm a little bit biased because I did do a spoiler reveal for a card featuring Koth. I think it was the last time Koth was ever printed on a card. It was Phyrexian Arena. I forgot what set it was for. It was for like one of the commander sets, or like it was a supplemental set for sure. But it was new artwork for Phyrexian Arena, and he was in it, which really leads me to think that, yeah, for sure, Koth is going to come back. Because if you go back to that artwork, guys, it's literally him like against a horde of Phyrexian, and he's ready to throw down, you know? So he's definitely there. He's still gritting his teeth. He's still doing it. A lot of newer players don't know who he is, but this is an A-tier Planeswalker. Our first A-tier Planeswalker in the rankings here, but Koth is going to play a role in the New Phyrexian storyline when we get back to it, and he is down there doing. He's been fighting for years. He's been fighting for years on New Phyrexia against the Phyrexians. So, yeah. Okay, next. A Planeswalker we know is dead, 100%. Domri Raid. Domri Raid is deceased, and no one could have cared less than me to see Domri Raid die in War of the Spark. So, Domri Raid was a weird character to kill off in War of the Spark because he did not have a lot of development up into that storyline. Domri Raid is essentially a teenage angsty brat in the Gruul clans of Ravnica, and he became like a war chief in the clan because he is thick-headed or something like that. I don't know how he beats up gigantic cyclopses, but he do. But yeah, essentially he's just a teenage anarchist, essentially. And to choose him specifically to kill off in War of the Spark, it just didn't make any sense. First, they made his character basically become a pawn of Nicol Bolas in his schemes. Essentially, Nicol Bolas came down and said, hey, you want to destroy civilization? I got some destroying for you to do if you catch my drift. And him being a Gruul man, he's just like, yeah, I want to smash Ravnica. Yeah, I'll work with these blue zombies. Yeah. But, you know, after he started realizing, like, wow, well, I'm killing a lot of people for no reason, he tried to turn against Nicol Bolas, but was killed almost instantly, getting desparked by the Eternals. Again, it was a death that was so unimpactful because Domri Raid's character was basically one small short story in the Return to Ravnica sets, or block. Yeah, he didn't have a lot of lore to back him up or prop him up. So seeing him die in War of the Spark didn't impact a lot of players. It just didn't. Although it is the closest that Wizards of the Coast will ever get to probably killing a child in their storyline. So they get a little edgy there. But I mean, I believe he was an adult when he died in War of the Spark. So this guy, he's going to D. He's going to D. He can't be F. He can't be F. He was involved in 2 storylines, but he's D. No one really cared about him. He's dead. Even his death, no one cared about it. Another character that's dead, and believe me, that's actually kind of rare. We don't see a lot of Planeswalkers that are actually dead in the story, but this one is confirmed dead. Dovin Bane. Dovin Baan? One of those two. I'm going to go with Dovin Baan. So Dovin Baan is, again, a Planeswalker with a cool design because they aren't just human. So as a Vedalken Planeswalker, Dovin Baan, he was very interesting to me. I actually loved his character. I loved it a lot. So he is a bureaucrat, Azorius, blue-white, plays it by the book, and is strictly adherent to the law. Now, some people can take that ideology and take it to an extreme, and while Dovin Baan really did follow the laws, he did it with justice in mind, and he didn't really pervert justice. It was literally just, what is the letter of the law? I'm going to follow it. He was a bureaucrat of bureaucrats, for sure. And people might think that's a dumb design for a character, but I actually like it. In a multiverse filled with renegade, rogue, do whatever I want because I want to Planeswalkers, someone who sits there and looks at the books and reads the laws and understands them, can manipulate them within their constructs and their framing, is a really cool idea. It just really is. He's the epitome of an Azorius Planeswalker. Now, that being said, he had so many cool instances in Kaladesh. In Kaladesh, he of course worked alongside Tezzeret, who was like the head honcho. So Tezzeret was making the rules, and Dovin was sort of just following them because he had to. But he didn't go so far as to be a villain. He always attempted to design the fights in a way that would reduce casualties, reduce damage to people's property. Like, he didn't just plan things out to just kill the foe. In this case, like Chandra and company. Eventually, he does die in War of the Spark. So, if you guys don't know, Dovin does die in War of the Spark. He becomes head of the Azorius through a bunch of law loopholes and stuff like that. And again, is like a unwitting pawn of Nicol Bolas, kind of sowing distrust in the guilds there. Kind of just weakening the defenses of Ravnica in general before Nicol Bolas arrives. Dovin is one of my personal favorite characters. His death was actually impactful. It actually mattered. And he was just a pretty cool design for a character. He's going in B. Straight up. You guys might not like him. You guys might not like bureaucrats or Azorius. That's my speed. Alright. Moving on. Elsbeth Tyrell. So, Elsbeth Tyrell is again one of those characters who has a deep-seated history in Magic the Gathering and has a great potential moving forward. Her storyline in the original Theros was just amazing. It was by far one of the best storylines I've ever seen. One of the coolest storylines in Magic the Gathering was the original Theros. It just was, to me. It was awesome. Theros Beyond Death gave a little bit of disservice to her because they didn't really have a storyline. I wanted to learn more about how she escaped the underworld. But her death in the original Theros was super impactful. Like, she was betrayed by Heliod and stabbed in the back after doing everything she could to be a hero. Everything. And she still was betrayed. And Ajani goes on this massive campaign to just dethrone Heliod. And, in the end of Beyond Death, Elsbeth gets her, not revenge, but gets her justice. She escapes the underworld with Erebos' help, and Heliod takes her place down there. Ajani does not yet know that Elsbeth is alive, and Ajani and Elsbeth are BFFs. Ajani is the one who broke down the most upon Elsbeth's death, tried to protect her as much as he humanly could, and vowed to get vengeance for her, or justice for her, by making Heliod fall from grace, which eventually would happen. So, with Elsbeth out now, her story can only get even better. She has a huge connection to the Phyrexians. So, when we do go back to the Phyrexians as a threat, she is going to be there 100%. And Ajani seeing her again, his best friend again, alive, it's going to be a cathartic reunion. Exactly. I couldn't put it any better myself. It's going to be one of the best storylines ever. And she came from one of my favorite storylines ever. So, Elsbeth is a straight S. Straight S. Next is another Commander Planeswalker. I literally have to look up the name of this card because I don't remember it. Eastrid the Masked. So I do remember, I made a video on this character a long time ago on the channel. As a Commander Planeswalker, there's not a lot of story there. There just really isn't, and there's not a lot of potential story there either. But she does love enchantments, and I do love enchantments. She makes masks based off of the opponents that she's faced and different fighting styles and techniques that she's encountered over the years of her travels. So she's constantly getting stronger, and she always has a mask to put on and gain that power or strength or skill, what have you. And she has a mask for almost every situation. I think if she puts a mask on of like an avian humanoid creature, she can fly and all this kind of stuff. So the more opponents that she faces, the more masks that she can make and the more things that she can do. So really cool character design, really cool potential there, but she will never get more of a story and more development in the game, unfortunately. Yeah, her art and her shtick is really cool, but that puts her in the solid C territory for me. I think in that video I joked and I said, what if she faces Nicol Bolas and makes a Nicol Bolas mask? You know, what would that mean? Would she just have all the powers of Nicol Bolas? No, she's the Majora's Mask Planeswalker, and that's basically it. It's gonna stop there. Now, my boy, Garrick Wildspeaker, baby! He is one of my favorite Planeswalkers of all time. I cannot lie, he is just one of my top Planeswalkers. If I were to say, like, this would be a Snap S for me. And you know what? I'm leaning towards Snap S. It's Garrick Wildspeaker. You know? He was my first Planeswalker I ever got. He was my favorite Planeswalker. He does the stuff I love. I love big beasties. I love stompy green. And his character is one of the oldest in the multiverse lore. He's an OG Planeswalker. It's a sin that he wasn't a part of the Gatewatch, and they finagled him to get in there somehow instead of Nyssa, although we'll talk about Nyssa later. If there was a double S, S+, Garrick would be in that tier. Now, as a character, he has been through a lot of evolutions. He's a big, burly huntsman, you know? He hunts big game, but he respects wildlife and nature at the same exact time. He basically just wants to be alone, make animal companions, and hunt impossibly large game, you know? Really, really cool, kind of generic fantasy character, that's true, but with his fight against Liliana Vess over the Chain Veil, like, you know, in the Innistrad / Chandra Nalar kind of storylines, and him being cursed by the Chain Veil, he was the first time that we saw what the Chain Veil can actually do, because the Chain Veil is so powerful that they didn't want to use it too much in the storyline. But Garrick was that shining example of what the Chain Veil's curse is, and why Liliana has to fight so hard to prevent that from overcoming her. He became a mindless murdering machine. Mindless murdering machine. He was hunting planeswalkers, was part of one of the coolest core set storylines ever, which I think was 2015, somewhere along those lines, where he was just this apex predator, man. And just like, if you mess with me, if you get in my area, you're gonna be slaughtered. And he even hunted down specific planeswalkers. It was just so cool. And then his eventual redemption was amazing. Now, I don't like the way his curse was cleansed. He fell into like a cauldron on Eldraine. Like, he basically fell into a pot, you know? Not only that, he fell into a pot that was already underwater, and then that cleared his curse and all this kind of stuff. It was really weird. But I'm glad they're moving forward with his character design. You know, the last time we saw him, Jace jammed a Hedron from Zendikar into his shoulder to kind of control the curse, and it did. It made him so he wasn't bloodthirsty and like looking for planeswalkers specifically to hunt and kill, but he still was like out of his bonkers mad and angry. But I gotta thank Oko for bringing him back into the story. I gotta thank Eldraine, who was a very strange set, for setting my boy free, because boy howdy, Garrick seeing Liliana Vess again whenever their encounter happens, because you know that's going to happen. That's a plot point that is too big to be unresolved. She cursed him, and he spent years as a mindless monster. So eventually that plot point will be resolved, and that will be one of the most just hyped up moments, I think, in Magic's history. 100%. But he's S tier. You already knew it. You knew it was going to be S tier no matter what. Alright, now another dead Planeswalker, which we have, like, it's weird. We've had like 4 dead Planeswalkers. Well, 3. And one optionally dead. Planeswalkers already out of the 60. It's really strange. But Gideon Jorah, an old Planeswalker, had a huge change in their development from Kithian Iora on Theros to getting his name accidentally changed on Alara to Gideon. I don't know why they did that. It's weird. Kithian, Gideon, that whole name change thing was dumb. I always thought it was dumb. I didn't get it. I thought it was needless. It was just like, yeah, I'll planeswalk to this world and someone mispronounces my name and I'll just go with it. Whatever. So weird. But he is the poster child of Magic the Gathering. Was for a long time. I know Jace was kind of up there too, and Jace is he is the face of Magic the Gathering. I would say Jace and Chandra kind of share that. But Gideon was the soul of Magic the Gathering. You know, he is a hero, a true hero. All these other planeswalkers have massive flaws, and Gideon had his flaws too. But at the end of the day, he was what a hero was meant to be in the Magic multiverse, and almost no other planeswalker could live up to that. His struggles, his sacrifices, all that kind of stuff, they're a testament to his character design. And while you can say and make the argument that it's a very boring design, it's a very All Might from My Hero Academia S design, where he can do no evil, do no wrong, all this kind of stuff. He did have his personal struggles a lot like that. A lot like All Might from My Hero. So there's a lot of parallels there. But that being said, he was the only impactful death in War of the Spark. You know, don't come at me with, Dak Faden and, Domri Raid. Now, even Nicol Bolas didn't die in War of the Spark. So the only real death was Gideon Jorah. And that was because he sacrificed himself for Liliana Vess, which really catapulted her story in Strixhaven. You know, so give Gideon's a lot of prop because his sacrifice is changing the development and the course of development for almost every character in the Gatewatch. Chandra, Jace, Nyssa, all of them are saying, what would Gideon do? You know? So even in death, he is still impacting the story. And people are talking about resurrecting him. Liliana's talking about resurrecting him. People are talking about turning him into a god on Theros since Heliod's fallen. They need a solid white god now. So Gideon has a lot of potential, and I see people are saying A tier, A tier, A tier. You can't disrespect him. I'm sorry, he's S. Alright, moving on, we have Huatli, the planeswalker whose name I struggled to pronounce for a long time when Ixalan came out, because I'm bad at fantasy names. Huatli is a very, very cool character, being Selesnya colors. She does something weird that's not super Selesnyan, which is not tokens or life gain related really, and she controls big monsters. She talks to dinosaurs, and she makes them her friends. Another thing that a lot of people don't know about Huatli is that she is a war poet. She is, I think, in her clan, the lead war poet, which is like a high-ranking honor of like lore mage or something. Huatli in War of the Spark, I think she became best friends with Saheeli. She has a lot of growth as a character. She has a lot of potential too. Her story in Ixalan was fantastic. I really did love her playful angst with Angrath. But sharing Angrath's fate, I believe she is B tier. She's had a couple great cards. Cards that I like personally. And she does have that growth in the future. But with her whole shtick being that she can control dinosaurs, there's only so many planes with dinosaurs, dude. I know they like to jam dinosaurs on every plane. The Colossal Dreadmaw meme, you know, if they did put a Colossal Dreadmaw on every single Magic expansion, sure, Huatli can fit anywhere. But she really plays to her strengths when she's with those big old dinosaurs, and that kind of limits her to very specific situations. Really cool story in Ixalan though. Like I said, Ixalan, one of the best stories for me. Now, on to a character that's really going to cause a lot of vigorous discussion. Jace Balaran. You know, I want to snap him to S because he's been involved in literally every storyline in Magic the Gathering for the modern era, and even some retroactively. So this is going to be tough to... How can I not put him in S? He is literally the face of the franchise. Oh, don't come at me with C tier for Jace. As much disrespect as people can throw on this man's name, He has put the franchise on his back. Now, is he a crybaby? Yes. Is he kind of a emo kid? Yeah. But if Gideon is S, then Jace is too. If Gideon is the soul of Magic the Gathering, and Jace is the face of Magic the Gathering, and Jace has been involved in more stories, Jace has to be S tier. I know, people are going to hate him. Yeah, Jace, bleh, Aaron. Do I like how hard he was pushed? No. Wizards of the Coast threw Jace at us everywhere. Every time we turned around, they threw a Jace. There's a Jace and there's a Jace. But, that being said, he was used to propel the plot a lot of times. And he made the plot better in some cases. He made the plot worse in some cases. And yeah, Jace did fall in love with with Vraska, a Gorgon. So, it's kind of weird. Jace has had a couple love interests. Vraska being his pirate lover was certainly an interesting storyline. Him being a bare-chested pirate gallivanting around Ixalan was very interesting. He can show that he's a versatile character when push comes to shove. Maybe he shouldn't have been that pushed, but sure. He was involved in so much that he cannot be anything but S. Now let's move on to another character that a lot of people probably don't really know the significance of, and that's really going to impact how they're viewed on my chart here, and that's Jaya Ballard. So Jaya Ballard is an old school pyromancer planeswalker. Kind of the pre-Chandra, before Chandra, pre-mending kind of planeswalker. Has a lot of power, kind of is like a mentor to Chandra now, or was. To the Magic the Gathering lore layman, they don't even know who Jaya Ballard is. Her transition from the old school lore to the modern day was not graceful. It was not a graceful transition. She basically just popped up as a grandma to Chandra, trying to give her more guidance, more of a parental attitude, a mentor, essentially. So, that being said, she was really cool. Like, she's a spicy character. I love the way that she's written. I love the way that she's designed. She is just a pyromancer, quite like Chandra. Obviously not involved in as many storylines. Obviously not as impactful to the Magic Gathering multiverse as Chandra. But still, the way that her character is, like, she's a sassy old lady, Sassy. I'm going to put her at A tier. And this is strictly because I know more of her backstory than probably the vast majority of the Magic the Gathering player base today. So for old school players that understand the story, Jaya Ballard is fantastic. For newer players, not so much. She was in Dominaria, which was a really, really fun expansion. Obviously, War of the Spark too. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Jaya Ballard at A. All right, moving on. Enough creepiness with cardboard. We have Jessica. So Jessica was, I believe this was a commander card when she was released, the Jessica the Thriceborn. But Jessica is a massive character when it comes to the story of Magic the Gathering. She's been printed like 4 or 5 times because, 3 times, because she has constantly died and been resurrected in various forms. She is Commander Legends, that's it. She was released in Commander Legends. So her story is one of sacrifice and evolution, So Jessica getting her own Planeswalker card was actually a huge deal for me personally, because she's a character that I know as a Planeswalker, but a lot of people don't know her story. She only has a couple previous printings where she's like a god, she's like a barbarian, and her final form of her is a resurrection as a Planeswalker before she gives up her spark and dies during the Rift events, the Rift Crisis. So I know all that backstory, so seeing her finally get a Planeswalker card was really, really cool for me. Based off of her history alone and how she's evolved as a character in Magic the Gathering, she's gonna be B. Now I put her at B because unfortunately she doesn't have a lot of impact in today's story. She's obviously, not around anymore. But she can't be A because she's strictly an old world Planeswalker. You know what I mean? She's if you're an old fan of the game, you'll know her, but she's not impacting anything further, so I'm going to say nice B tier spot for her. Alright, Next up, we have Gian Yang. I believe that's his name and how it's pronounced. Gian Yang. So this is one of the Planeswalkers from the regional Chinese release sets who made their way to War of the Spark. I believe they're in War of the Spark, so it's a weird Planeswalker that came from a supplementary set, but was pulled into the Magic the Gathering mainstream via War of the Spark, which was actually kind of cool. I don't have a lot of interest in this character personally. Not a lot of development is there, obviously. No story. Basically a young kid with a Planeswalker Spark, and he can bring his dog with him. The best thing about this Planeswalker is the doggo. That being said, that is not enough to save this young Planeswalker from the D tier. D for doggo, and that's where he belongs. It seems like all Planeswalkers under the age of 10, under the age of 14 can't make it out of C tier or lower. And that system breaks. The kid Planeswalkers can't catch a break, man. They can't. All right, moving on, we got Karn. Karn is another old character in the lore. One of the oldest characters in the lore, dating all the way back to the, Urza days. The original Brothers War, all this kind of stuff. He is an old character in the storyline. Started off as a silver golem, couldn't do anything, was just a construct of Urza, and then was eventually given a spark in and of himself, and he became a sentient kind of traveler of the multiverse, became a kind, loving mentor to Jessica, and built his own world of Mirrodin, which eventually turned into Phyrexia. Mirrodin itself had a cool storyline. Karn always was looking to return there and, just expel evil from his plane, which I'm sure is going to be a plot point moving forward with New Phyrexia. In fact, Karn is one of those characters in Dominaria's history, and from the more recent Dominaria expansion, that specifically said, I am going to go destroy New Phyrexia after this. He is a cool character with a bunch of development. He's got a sad story, honestly. If you guys have time, read up on him. He's a pretty sad character. But despite all that, he always tries to do what is right. He has such a long history, and his potential for the future with New Phyrexia and his drive to get his world back, his home world that he built himself, back from New Phyrexia, is going to only drive him to be an even bigger character moving forward. He's got the Sylex, baby. He's got another Sylex blast coming to New Phyrexia. That can only warrant an S tier. Can only warrant S tier. Next, we have a relative newcomer whose first card appearance was in War of the Spark, Kazmina. Now, Kazmina is a very, very strange character. Their only points of lore have been from a little bit in War of the Spark and the most recent set at the time of this recording, which is Strixhaven. So, we don't have a lot of history there. But Kazmina does bring with her a lot of potential. A lot of potential. The big thing about her potential is that she's gathering new or young Planeswalkers whose spark have just ignited and teaching them and trying to get them to join her secret organization. Now, we don't know much about this secret organization, and unfortunately, we didn't learn a lot about it in Strixhaven. I kind of thought that Strixhaven was going to be like the headquarters for this mysterious group of shadowy Planeswalkers who were going to face some upcoming threat that in the lore that we're given is quote-unquote bigger than War of the Spark. Unfortunately, none of that was expanded upon in Strixhaven when she appeared. She just kind of dropped Will and Row and Kenrith there, and it was like watching them. A lot of potential. It hasn't been met yet. She will be involved in a lot of storylines moving forward, especially with whatever comes out of this building an army to face some unknown threat thing is. But this is a C tier Planeswalker for now. No, not a lot of history to pull from. Hasn't had a lot of impact in the story that she is featured in, but has so much potential for the future. She can't be D. She might, this time next year, she might be A tier. We don't know. Her story has that much potential. But that's where she is right now. Alright, let's move on to Kaya. Kaya. Another Planeswalker introduced in a supplemental set. I believe it was Conspiracy. I'm not sure if it was Conspiracy. It was Conspiracy 2. Take the crown, take the throne, one of those two. So Kaya was introduced in a supplementary set and then was pulled in to the mainstream storyline with War of the Spark. Leading up to it, I believe it was Ravnica City of Guilds or Allegiances. One of those two. She was pulled back into the mainstream storyline as a new character, a viable character in the Planeswalker roster for Magic the Gathering. Now, initially, she is just a ghost assassin. So she literally goes around and kills ghosts and spirits for money. Really, really small niche there. Really small niche. But from that niche, her character has expanded and developed quite a bit into that she was the main protagonist in Kaldheim. She was the hero of Kaldheim. She faced down Phyrexian Praetor in Kaldheim. She has a lot of potential. She really, really does. And she has kind of emerged as like a new face for Magic the Gathering. She has been front and center for a little bit now. They're kind of pushing her, it feels like, being a hero and all this kind of stuff. And she joined the Gatewatch. That's where her pushing really, really started. Joining the Gatewatch is a really strong indication that they have a lot planned with her. That being said, though, she is on the cusps of becoming a regular character, but she isn't quite there yet. I can't say she's B because she is being heavily pushed. I don't know where her story goes from here, so the potential might be a little bit iffy, but she really did become the face of Magic for a little bit. And that might continue. I'm going to put her at A tier. Alright, now this is going to be probably another hot topic for some of you guys, but Kiora. So, if you are a Planeswalker who is not strictly a human, I give you a lot of props because you are meddling in a practice that is almost human-centric. Kiora is one of my favorite characters in all of Magic the Gathering because I am a Simic player by nature. I love Simic. I love green-blue. But that being said, I also love big, dumb, stompy monsters. See where I'm getting at here? She gives me the best of both worlds. She's a Simic who loves big, stompy monsters. I just love her. She's a great design. I love merfolks as a race. I love Zendikar as a plane, and that's her home. I love Theros' original storyline, and Kiora's plot in Theros' original storyline was so much fun. So much fun. She stole a godly weapon from the god of the sea, and then has the trident with her, and just goes around commanding the waters of every plane. She literally tried her hardest to destroy the Eldrazi Titans with sea monsters. Alright? I love that stuff. Alright? The Godzilla fan in me loved that. Loved it. She's personally one of my favorite Planeswalkers. I think she's going to be B tier. She has a very strong history in the Magic the Gathering storyline. Her potential has capped, and her ending, her quote-unquote ending, wasn't satisfactory. You know, as someone who likes Kiora, she's really, really cool. I was not happy with that ending whatsoever, but at the same time, I don't see much potential for growth either. I don't know when they would bring her back. So, with all that in question, I'll keep her at B. Alright, let's just snap it S. Liliana of S is S. If you guys have any questions, if you guys have any comments or concerns, please keep them to yourself because you know she's going to be S. We're going to have a couple trolls in here in a second saying that she's DC, boring, blah. No. She's a solid S. We don't even need to talk about it. She's an OG character. She joined the Gatewatch. She's a complex character. Her whole story arc of just killing the demons to get her soul back. She's been involved in so many storylines. And she's been so she's developed so much over her tenure that she has to be an S. And her most recent development as someone who is just questioning if she even deserves to be alive is such a cool aspect of her character, not yet explored. And it's something that I'm really looking forward to, especially out of Strixhaven and all that development there. And coping with Gideon's sacrifice to save her. She's done being a pawn. She's discovering who she is, and she's not going to be totally obsessed with power and stuff moving forward. And we've seen a lot of her character focused on power, so she has so much potential moving forward, and she's done so much for Magic the Gathering's history. She is on Auto S. Alright guys, Lord Wingrace. Now this is a character that a lot of new players, again, will not understand. He's a commander set Planeswalker, so not a lot of lore given, but that's for a good reason, because he's dead. Well, in body anyway. Lord Wingrace is another old Planeswalker, super old. Beginning of Dominaria story arc old. So here there's a lot of history to pull from, but he doesn't add a lot more to the Magic Gathering story moving forward. He is a Planeswalker that protected the area of Urborg on Dominaria. He died to destroy the rift that was occurring there. I believe it was releasing a bunch of Phyrexians from a different time. So he sacrificed himself, his spark, to close that rift. But Lord Wingrace is definitely an older school Planeswalker, so if you're an older fan of the game, you're going to know him. If not, you're not going to care about him. To me, that screams high C. Like, that's going to be that's C+. I think Jessica has a little bit more impact on the Magic the Gathering storyline in general in its history, so she's going to be a B. But Lord Wingrace, maybe not have had that much written impact, was still such a big character for old school players that top of the C is where I'll put him. Alright, now to the character that everyone kind of like was hamming me over, Luca. Oh, Luca. What do we do with you? Luca is a character that I love to hate. He's a character that I hate to discuss because I don't understand him whatsoever. I really don't. He flips from good to bad. He is a registered furry. Not really. He just loves animals. But he doesn't love them that much because while he bonds with animals and makes friends with them, he also uses them mindlessly as weapons and doesn't care if they live or die, so long as they protect him and he uses them to whatever means he needs. So he's a weird character. Definitely not a nature mage that we're used to, but that's why he is red. But he constantly is doing the wrong things for the quote-unquote right reasons. Alright, so on a Courier, he went mad. He got kicked out and ostracized for having this strange power, and that was wrong of that society. But he thought the best way to save his society from monsters was to use monsters as a weapon and meat shield against other monsters. That doesn't scream very noble to me. His actions in Strixhaven were also very questionable. I just didn't understand why he joined the Orc. I just didn't. Like, it didn't make any sense. It was just like, oh my goodness. No one here likes me. So instead of planeswalking away and just finding some place where I could be happy or alone or whatever, let me just join this group of people that everyone else on this plane hates and, maybe I'll get along with them. I don't know why they hate him, but I'm just going to join them anyway. It could be a justifiable reason, but screw it. I'm just going to join this evil cult. It's fine. He just hasn't found his footing in the story. And this is the second time that he's appeared. And he appeared in Strixhaven, which is a set that has almost no tie to his character or its development or anything. It feels like he was either shoehorned in, or they have something else bigger planned for his character's development. But it looks like on Strixhaven, he just kind of did more of the same he did on Ikoria. Kind of make bad decisions, but has a good heart. Is kind of like an anti-hero almost. Does what he wants, but he thinks he's doing what is right. He hasn't landed yet on the story. He has potential, I think, but he's D tier. Alright, so next up we have the other of the Chinese regional planeswalkers that made an appearance. I believe it was in, I don't know, they weren't in War of the Spark, but they were in a Magic 19 core set, Magic 20 core set, one of the two. But her name is Mu Yan Ling. And she is a water mage, like a water dancer. Again, not a lot of story. Huge gap in their history. Don't know anything about her, really. Core set 2020. Magic 20, got it. There's nothing really there. Is there potential? Sure. I don't know anything. Like, if you guys know more about her, let me know. But this is a straight D tier. Nihiri. Alright, Nihiri the Lithomancer was an amazing storyline for Magic the Gathering because she started off as an absolute mystery. Back when I first started the storyline of Magic the Gathering, making content about her, she, like 5-6 years ago, no one knew anything about her. She was the mysterious Lithomancer that helped carve the prison of the Eldrazi Titans on Zendikar. She was a friend of Ugin's, she was a friend of Soren's. And that's all we really knew about her, and her story slowly was developed over time. She is what I believe is a great example of character development in a fantasy world, starting off as a mystery, a rumor, folklore if you would, and then turning into a full-fledged character that is slightly less desirable than the stories made her sound to be, like the myths made her sound to be. The fact that we didn't see it happen in a current set, but learned about her fight with Soren Markov over time, how she felt betrayed by Soren and Ugin, even though she didn't know Ugin was dead, but Soren just never got the message. It was the worst case of miscommunication ever, but she felt like Zendikar, her home, the place that she allowed them to imprison these monsters, was losing it, was being destroyed from the inside out, and none of her allies cared about her, you know? All of that frustration came out on her mentor, Soren, who she believed were friends. But no amount of logical thought could stop Nihiri from being so mad that she attacked Soren, which was a really bad move because Soren is super powerful. She got locked away into the Hell Vault along with all the demons and Avacyn and all this kind of stuff. Her character's development and storyline from, you know, protector of Zendikar to naive, frustrated student to vengeance-seeking, insane mad woman who was going to destroy Innistrad, eye for eye justice on Soren, and then to her return to Zendikar in Zendikar Rising, which was not a high point for her storyline, I have to say. I didn't really understand her. She just turned out, she's like just turning to be evil. You know, she may have taken that turn into be a heel in the story, but she has potential. She's an old Planeswalker in the lore for sure, so I'm going to give her respect. She's A tier. Still one of the coolest development arcs for a Planeswalker. Alright, Narset. So Narset is going to be a little bit of a challenge for me to rank here. So, as a Planeswalker, she's cool. I loved her in Tarkir. She was a great character to explore the world of Tarkir with, and it was great seeing how she wasn't a Planeswalker in one of the timelines, and then as the timelines shift and she learns about that shift in the world and what the history could have been but was changed, learning that knowledge is what sparked her Planeswalker spark, ignited it. That's a really cool arc for me. So during the entire block, seeing her development and change over these different timelines and the cause of her spark igniting was really, really cool and interesting. Of course, she was involved in the War of the Spark as well. But the last time we saw her was, strangely enough, on Ikoria. And Narset did nothing on Ikoria. Like, I'm pretty sure she wasn't involved in Ikoria at all. She may have had a couple lines in there, but I don't know what she was doing on Ikoria, and I think they just forced her in for no reason. So, honestly, like, she's a cool character. She was cool for Tarkir. I don't know where she fits anywhere else. You know, outside of the whole revelation of the dragons, you know, the Khans of Tarkir / Dragons of Tarkir revelation to her and her character development, I don't know where else there is to explore with her, so I'm going to put her at C. Simply because she could have potential, and they tried to give her some potential in Ikoria. It didn't work. It wasn't explored enough. That could have been their fault, or was it the Coast fault? But still, she's a C tier Planeswalker. All right. As the biggest baddie in Magic the Gathering, one of the biggest baddies, Nicol Bolas is obviously S tier as a character. He's got plots on plots. He's got schemes on schemes. He's been killed, resurrected twice. He's been foiled a couple times. He's had so many different... He's had his claws in so many different plot points. He's the one who released the Eldrazi Titans. He inadvertently created the Gatewatch. Like, there's so many big events. The destruction of Amonkhet, like the restructuring of that entire civilization, the creation of the gods, all that kind of stuff was directly of Nicol Bolas' doing. He's done so much. He helped with the Rift Crisis on Dominaria. He was a primal dragon, one of the firsts. He is obvious S tier. He is the biggest brain in Magic the Gathering. The best, probably the most fleshed out villain. There are cooler threats. Like, in my opinion, the Eldrazi Titans are a cooler threat than a mad plotting Elder Dragon who just seeks godhood. But the War of the Spark, as disappointing as it was as a story, Nicol Bolas played his part well. And he's still alive. So hey, there's still potential for him. Who knows? But yeah, he's an S tier easy. S tier easy. Alright, Nico Aries. Another character that a lot of people are going to be like, huh? Who? So Nico Aries in Coldheim was not exciting. He was kind of boring. Sorry, I'm saying he. This, to put it correctly, is a them. They are non-binary, and I wish to respect that. As the character is developed in that way, they are them. Yeah, Nico Aries is more of a who with a question mark than anything else. But yeah, Nico Aries' story in Coldheim was not well placed because it was a side story away from the main story that looped into the main story at the very end. So people who didn't read the side story were completely just like kerfuffled at where did this person come from and what are they doing? You know, they just make shards of glass. Their descriptions are really cool, that they can imprison people within these shards of glass and for an extended period of time, and you know, throw the glass and then they can appear on the other side, all this kind of stuff. Really cool ability sets. I don't like the design of the character personally. It's just kind of boring. Their involvement in the Coldheim story was also lackluster and just made it didn't mesh well with the main storyline. You know, and if you're going to count the main storyline as being the meat and potatoes of the set, and their side story was just like a side dish, it really didn't work well. I'm sorry, but I'm going to throw them in the D tier. Might be a good character for growth there, but outside of Kaya kind of just like, hey, you know, you're a new Planeswalker, maybe I'll show you the ropes. There might be some room for development there, but I don't know where they could go. I'm going to put D. Ob Nixilis. Now, personally, one of my favorite Planeswalkers of all time are right up there with Garrick. I really do like Ob Nixilis a lot because he is so much... He's an effective villain. He is an effective Planeswalker villain, and we do not see a lot of those. We really, really don't. So, Ob Nixilis starts off as like a warlord who just goes to different planes and just obliterates them with his efficient... war-like attitude. He's a pre-mending Planeswalker, so he has a lot of skill in warfare under his belt. He might not have the godlike powers anymore, but he is strong. And his story is so cool, man. It really is. He gets cursed. I believe he gets cursed by the Train Veil. And it kind of gives him this demonic form, and he loses his Planeswalker spark, and he's trapped on Zendikar, you know? He tricks, like, Jace Balaran into like fixing the curse a little bit, and his spark gets ignited just a little bit. Like he becomes just a bigger demon, you know, a bigger demon after Jace puts a Hedron in him or something and kind of like siphons away some of the curse of the Chain Veil. And then he finally becomes a full-blown Planeswalker again after he sucks a lot of energy out of Zendikar itself. The plane is almost pure mana, so he kind of pulls like a mini Nicol Bolas, where Nicol Bolas needed to, like on Alara, his plot was to siphon all the mana from the conflux of Alara to become a god again. Ob Nixilis siphoned a little bit of the mana from Zendikar, which is rich in mana, to reignite his Planeswalker spark. So really cool development and arc of a character. He is an effective villain. He was in War of the Spark, where he was kind of like, huh, fine, I guess I'll do stuff to help people because I guess I don't want to die here too. But he's like a cooler, effective version of Tybalt, if that makes sense. He's got the demonness, he's got the villainness. He's cool. I'm going to put him on, he's A. He's A to me. Alright guys, moving on to everyone's favorite sexy pixie elf sprite man, Oko. Oko. Now, if we were playing, if we were just looking at single cards, I would put him as S tier because people went nuts for Oko and his food makingness. But we are not ranking this strictly off of card alone. We're also going to look at the character's design. I do think Oko has a very cool design as a character, and he did play a huge role in getting Garrick Wildspeaker back into the mainstream storyline. So I am eternally grateful to Oko. Essentially, Garrick was on the scent of Oko, trying to hunt him down and kill him. Oko knows that he's a beast and a planeswalker, so he kind of warps his mind and makes him his slave, essentially. So Oko walks around with his bodyguard dog, who's Garrick, and, you know, the story happens in Eldraine, and he gets freed, and he, you know, slaps Oko around, but Oko gets away. But Oko is cool because he's a Loki character. He is actually more Loki-esque than Tybalt was playing the trickster god in Kaldheim. He's way more of a Loki-esque character than that whole mess. So Oko's cool. His story in Eldraine was cool. Just disrupting everything, and again, playing this Tybalt kind of chaos role, evil, just playing pranks, but they're very mean-spirited, and trying to topple the civilization there. But he doesn't, I don't know where he goes from there. He might be a one-off planeswalker. I don't know if we'll ever see Oko again. But I said that about Tybalt, and here he is. Still, I'm going to put him as B. Because of his card, because he pulled Garrick Wildspeaker back from the fringes of obscurity back into the mainstream, Oko gets a B. Plus, he's shirtless and ripped. If we're going to count sexiness into this ranking system, he's up there. Can you believe Oko and Garrick were standing right next to each other at some point in the story? I'm just saying, there's a dynamic there. Oko loves bears. And Garrick's got plenty of bears. Alright, so, moving on, Ralzeric. Ralzeric is a very interesting character because I love Ravnica and all things Ravnica, but Ralzeric never really jumped off the pages for me. He never really did. I do love the Izzet. I think they're cool. I think him working under Niv Mizzet and then eventually getting the Izzet guild from Niv Mizzet was really, really cool. The whole Lightning Bug project was really, really interesting. Him working alongside Jace. And then, of course, you know, the whole War of the Spark thing. You know, it's cool. Ralzeric is cool. He's a cool character. He's funny. I think he came out as gay in the storyline, which is cool. But he never really slammed home to me as a character that I really loved in the story. While he was always there, kind of in the story, he never really was guiding the story. His little rivalry and fights with Jace were always super entertaining, but I was really into it for Jace. I don't know. I'm kind of weird. I don't know where to put him. I'm going to put him at B. Because he is an old character. Ravnica is a cool set. Cool world. Lots of history there. Ralzeric has a lot of history there too. So, I'm just going to keep him at B for now. Alright, now I should have done these guys together, but they are two humans, two different people. So, Rowan Kenrith. Now, I am a twin myself. I have a twin brother. And I can relate wholeheartedly to the relationship that Will and Rowan Kenrith have with one another. Like, I understand everything there is about sibling rivalry, especially when it's a twin, you know? So, having twin characters in the story is super relatable for me personally. But anyone with a strong sibling connection, you know how those relationships can be stressed. So these characters have a lot to like and see in yourself. Again, these are Planeswalkers that came from a supplemental set, Battle Bond, that made it to the mainstream. And it's really, really interesting to see them being on these flip Planeswalker cards. They're always one with the other, it feels like. In Strixhaven, they're really cool to see how they develop their personalities, how they differ, how they grow, how they learn. So they might be really, really pushed for the future of Magic the Gathering. And I'm going to tell you this right now, Will and Rowan Kenrith are both going to go on the same tier because they followed the same track. I like Rowan a little bit more because I'm more punchy and Will is more learny. But they're two sides of the same coin. I'm going to put them both at C. I like what they did in Strixhaven, and I'm curious to see how they'll develop moving forward, especially in conjunction with Kazmina. You know, Kazmina, Will and Rowan Kenrith are literally her target audience for recruitment on her secret group guild thingy, for whatever plot that's going to be. So they're going to be connected. They're already connected. I'm excited to see where it could go moving forward. But for now, the twins, they sit at C. Alright, Saheeli Rai. I liked Kaladesh as a set. Story-wise, it was kind of all over the place, but it was the last story that I felt was like really, really interesting, and I poured a lot of love into it and all the videos surrounding that series. I loved it. Saheeli being new and involved in that set, of course, added a lot to it, but Saheeli unfortunately fell into the shadow of the likes of Chandra, Tezzeret, and Ajani Goldman in that set. Got a way more development in War of the Spark than a lot of other characters did. Of course, it had a lot of characters to go and develop, but Saheeli and Huatli had some time there, had some moments, but not a lot is going to happen with her moving forward, I don't think. Saheeli is, in my opinion, the perfect C character because they played their role in the set that they were introduced in. They even got a little bit more development after the fact, but their future potential is very limited. So I'm going to put her at C for those reasons. Yes, the fact that she made robot dinosaurs was really cool. And you know what? Since she was making robot dinosaurs, and Huatli, I already have Huatli at B, I'm going to put her at B. I just changed my mind. The whole robot dinosaur thing, you get B for that. Saheeli, you get B for that. And you know what? If you ever come back, you need to make some more monsters. You're going to make some big things. You're going to make artifact dinosaurs for Huatli to control. End of conversation. Kaladesh was fun. You deserve B. Alright, Samut. Samut is another one of those characters who got a little bit more development in War of the Spark than a lot of other characters. I really didn't think Samut's story would be that impactful, but it was. I believe she was a part of the group that went onto Amonkhet in order to stop the Eternals coming in from the other side, to stop Tezzeret essentially in the portal. She got a little bit more character development there. She had a lot of cards associated to her in War of the Spark as well, so that was cool. It was cool to see. Silent's storyline is really cool as well. We see her again go from a non-Planeswalker to a Planeswalker over the course of the storyline for Amonkhet, and because of that, she kind of falls into the same range as Huatli and Saheeli. She's a B. You know, we see her development. She grows as a character, and we get a little bit of extra bonus when it came to War of the Spark. That's a B. That's a B. Again, I don't know where her storyline goes from here. Amonkhet's destroyed. Amonkhet is utterly ravaged. There's like minuscule pockets of survivals wandering the desert now. Eternals are everywhere. There's plague gods everywhere. Eventually, maybe she'll go back. She is speedy quick. Maybe she'll go back to Amonkhet and try and save it in some kind of weird return to Amonkhet set, but there's not a lot to return to, so Samut's story might be done. Might be done. Now here's a story who's not done and has brought a lot to Magic the Gathering. Sarkhan Vol. Sarkhan Vol. Oh my goodness. One of my favorite characters of all time. Just one of those original characters that I just latched onto early and just loved watching the development of. You know, starting off as an evil dragon slave to Nicol Bolas. He simps for dragons so hard. So hard. Like, he just simps them. You know? He was a crazy dragon man. He wants dragons to love him. He loves dragons. It's insane. And then he goes and he learns and he gets rid of his dragon addiction and he becomes a true hero. He broke timelines of Tarkir, all this kind of stuff. Do we all simp for dragons? I don't know, but Sarkhan Vol certainly does. So, you know what? Because of his story arc and how many colors he's actually explored, he's been a lot of different color ranges. He's going to be an A. He's had so much impact over the course of the story, a lot of the plots involving Nicol Bolas, the whole Tarkir storyline. I think his story isn't done yet. I believe he will come back, hopefully. And if he does, he's a character that's really, really worth exploring and playing around with. So, he gets an A. Alright, Sarah. So, a lot of new players are not going to know who this is. Again, this is a Commander Legends Planeswalker, I believe. It's a nostalgic addition to the Planeswalker roster. She is deceased. She is an old school pre-mending Planeswalker. She is the creator of the Sarah Angels, one of the most iconic angels and creatures in all of Magic the Gathering, probably. So, on that alone, she gets a lot of prop. That being said, her story is delegated strictly to the past. She created her own angelic world where peace reigns supreme. And of course, Urza, being the big old dum-dum that he is, accidentally brought some Phyrexian oil there and corrupted the whole damn place. And she had to sit and watch her created world collapse and die and break, thanks to Urza. And she eventually died herself sometime later. Sacrificed herself because her lover had died or something along those lines. Yeah, like her love had died and then she was mortally wounded and then she could have healed herself, but she refused. So she just let herself go. And that was the end of Sarah. Her story was so big back in the day. Before I started playing, mind you. I read it, retroactively. Huge impact to the past of Magic. Obviously not a lot for the future of it. But I'm going to pay my respects and put her at B. Sarah Angel alone, that creature card being so iconic to Magic the Gathering, needs to be B. And she does hold the record for having one of the saddest storylines in Magic the Gathering history. By far. Moving on. I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted by chat here. You guys are crazy. Soren B? No. Okay, guys. Soren Markov. Here we go. Obviously one of the coolest characters in Magic the Gathering, right? Has been involved in some of the major plot points in the Magic story, the Eldrazi Titans being one, his fight with Nihiri being a big part of it, and the Eldrazi Titans coming to Innistrad, his home plate of Innistrad and just the way that it's set up and the dichotomy between good and evil there. He is a vampire lord, a planeswalker, who plays the long game. He doesn't just say, oh, the vampires are my people, so I'm going to fight for them. No. He demands balance. He will smite his own people if they get too cocky and start eating too many humans. He is playing the long game on Innistrad, and with that, he brought real peace and prosperity to his world with his creation of Avacyn. Avacyn is my favorite singular legendary creature in all of Magic the Gathering. She just is. I love Avacyn's character. I hate that she turned evil and we had to kill her, Soren had to kill her. But still, one of my favorite characters of all time. I even named my dog Avacyn. So if that's not a ringing endorsement for that angel and by proxy, her creation, I don't know what else is. Soren has so much potential moving forward. His fight with Nihiri is still ongoing. We don't know how that's going to be resolved. Last time we saw, they were fighting each other amidst the War of the Spark. On the rooftops, throwing spells at one another, despite everything, and then eventually calmed down and went to an agreement, but we don't know how that ended. So there's a lot of open potential there. So, I don't know what you guys are saying. Soren is an old school planeswalker, been here for a long time, has one of the most interesting designs imaginable, being a vampire who is not just strictly evil and drinking human blood left and right. He is someone who demands balance, good and evil. He really projects the best qualities of both, while having this weird superiority complex too, on top of it to kind of balance him out. he is actually one of the true heroes of Magic the Gathering, although a little bit misunderstood and a little bit misguided at some points. He's an S. Alright, next, Tamiyo. When they were first released, no one knew anything about her because she didn't have any lore or story to speak of. She was just on Innistrad. She was a moon folk from Kamigawa of all places. So in terms of originality, in terms of the design of her character, 10 out of 10. A moon folk from Kamigawa, Planeswalker on Innistrad, amazing. I loved it. It was just a really cool design. I hope one day we return to Kamigawa so we can explore that a little bit more. And Tamiyo would be the perfect character to reintroduce us to that plane. So make it happen, Wizards. It would be great. But still, her initial showing on original Innistrad was nothing. She was basically there studying the moon and its power over the world. But that came full circle with Shadows over Innistrad and Eldritch Moon when all of that research came to a head and she helped in the trapping of Emrakul in the moon. So like there was actually substantial connections between her character and Innistrad, even though there wasn't a lot of lore there, and her more modern iteration. And of course, she was involved in the War of the Spark, and she takes this weird pacifist role in things. She doesn't write history. She doesn't make history. She writes history, records, observes. She plays a researcher role, you know? Which is a really cool design for a character. She has a lot of potential moving forward, especially with our return to Innistrad. With one of the sets focusing on werewolves, I think she could be a huge boon for a set like that. She loves learning about that moon, man. So her return there would be great. I'm going to say she's an A. A lot of people are going to say that's kind of weird, but her connection to the Gatewatch and Jace and Shadows over Innistrad and Eldritch Moon was really good. It was really good. Her character design and her development there was awesome. The fact that she has this big an endless pocket of powerful ancient scrolls that can, like, she would never use in a million years because they're so powerful, and then Emrakul takes control of her mind and uses one of the scrolls to imprison herself in the moon. Man, she has a lot of potential for growth. She really does. She's kind of tied to either Kamigawa or Innistrad, but hey, if we return to Innistrad and she's there, I'll love it. If she takes us back to Kamigawa, I would love that. So, you're an A tier Planeswalker. Alright, Teferi, everyone's favorite / least favorite card ever. Teferi currently banned in Standard. For good reason. His card's insane. And only at rare quality too, which is nuts from War of the Spark. Teferi is an old Planeswalker. A lot of history and lore from the past. Like, a lot of modern players won't even know his past exploits or anything like that, and how he, you know, essentially he saved Dominaria. He did. He sacrificed his spark, and all of his efforts went to saving Dominaria, and he succeeded in that mission. Time Spiral. Look it up. He did it. That being said, him being brought back in the newest Dominaria set, him gaining his spark back, becoming a Planeswalker again, and then really falling right back into that hero role that he was in Days of Old was great. He's become the face of the franchise of the past couple sets, even more so than like Kaya or something. Like, he has really taken the place of Jace, essentially. He has been on everything from the Magic Core sets, Dominaria, War of the Spark. He's appeared in all these places, and he's aware of the Phyrexian threats. He's going to be involved in that storyline. He's only going to get more and more spotlights as we move forward. This is an A tier character. The only reason I'm putting him at A instead of S, no, screw this. He's S tier. He has to be S tier. Like, he's an old Planeswalker with loads of history and development. He went from a coward who hid and ran from the Phyrexians to sacrificing his life to save Dominaria, and then gaining that spark back and doing it again. Alright, he's S tier. S tier. We have Tevesh Svat. Now, I did a video on Tevesh Svat, and I can still not tell you exactly what his story is. He's an old school Planeswalker with a lot of old lore that I am just not very privy to. I didn't read too much about it. A lot of old comic books and graphic novels he was a part of. It stops there. He is deceased. He's from a supplemental set, Commander Legends. Really, really cool villain. Like, he's basically half octopus, right? So, he was working alongside Urza. He was evil. He was always evil, you know? But Urza needed his help with the Thran, and he became a Titan in, like, his mech suit and fighting the Phyrexians on Phyrexia, and he betrayed all the other Titans and all this kind of stuff. Is insane. You know, him and Urza, they're both up there for who messed up that scheme the most. Urza obviously had his fair share of bad stuff that he did in that storyline, but Tevez was the one who actually performed the betrayals and all this kind of stuff. He's a weird character. He joined forces with Urza, but I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing. Obviously, it ended up being bad because they stabbed everyone in the back. But Urza kind of planned on that, so who knows? Because he is an old Planeswalker with an old story and not a lot of new characters, or not a lot of new players are going to know him, he's going to fall into the same category as Lord Wingrace here. I like him even a little bit less than Ashiok, but way more than Calyx. Yeah, definitely C. Gonna go beneath Sarah, and gonna go beneath Lord Wingrace too here. But old Planeswalker, you're gonna get C tier. You're gonna get C tier. Now the next one is we have Tio, shield guardian person from an unknown plane where it has sandstorms, where I thought it was Amonkhet, but it's actually not Amonkhet. Tio was really, really important in the War of the Spark novel. He was like one of the main characters in the War of the Spark novel, which was really, really strange for a set that had so many old returning Planeswalkers to it. They decided to have a new Planeswalker, Tio, be literally the first character in the novel that you see, and like kind of walk with them through the events of the War of the Spark. It's hilarious to think that out of all the characters that were coming in the War of the Spark, that this random Planeswalker whose first card was in War of the Spark and is only at uncommon, was the face of the book almost. Like, okay, he was the leader of one of the worst debacles of Magic the Gathering storyline. I'm sorry. If we ever see him again, it would be too soon. I'm only going to remember him as the harbinger of the end of Magic the Gathering story. Essentially, you get F tier, buddy. All he was a plot point for the writer. That's it. And he took way too much time away from other more interesting characters coming around for War of the Spark for the first time in a long time. There was a lot of characters that were making their return in War of the Spark that really should have had more spotlight than this guy. Get out of here. All right, Tezzeret. Now, Tezzeret is another successful villain Planeswalker design. Really, really strong character. The whole interplanar portal built into his chest makes him an interesting plot device. You know, his connection to Nicol Bolas, the fact that he wants to be free to his own plots. He doesn't want to be free because he's a good guy. He wants to be free because he wants to be his own master and do his own schemes. But the fact that he was shackled to Nicol Bolas and forced to be this tunnel for his army in War of the Spark, and he was so thankful that his ass was kicked by the heroes of War of the Spark so he could stop helping Nicol Bolas, and he prayed that they killed Nicol Bolas so he could be free. It's such a cool character design. He's a really sad character. Like, if you go and read his history and his story, he's had to struggle against a lot, coming out of poverty, all this kind of stuff. He's a really, really well-designed villain, you know, mostly because he's done a lot of bad things in service of another higher power, but he is also motivated by singular strength and his own power and his own worth and wealth. He has a lot of things that push him forward to do evil things that aren't just, oh, I want money or stuff like that, you know? So he's a good character. And we know he is going to be tied into the Phyrexians somehow. The interplanar portal that he has in his chest is going to deliver the Phyrexians to different worlds. We've already seen it on Kaldheim. We already know it's going to be. We already know where it's going to be. He's A+. Like, he's not an S-tier Planeswalker yet, but he's on track to be an S-tier villain. He might be the only S-tier villain outside of Nicol Bolas that I can think of, but he's on his way. And if his character continues to develop, especially with the threat of New Phyrexia, he could possibly get there. but right now he's A+. Alright, the Wanderer. The mysterious planeswalker who is going to be teasing us with what their true identity is for a while until it's finally revealed, and we're most likely going to be disappointed. Look, I'm not trying to be pessimistic. I'm just trying to be realistic with the track record that Wizards of the Coast has. We don't know anything about him. We don't know anything about the Wanderer. We know it's a female. We know they have like a wind blade. We know that I think they travel to planes randomly because of some weird issue with their spark. I'm just going to put her in D. we have nothing to pull from. She has an uncommon card in War of the Spark, and we have a very brief explanation of her. Wanderer has potential because of the whole mystery about who they are, but right now there's nothing to really talk about. Alright, Tibalt. Everyone's butt end of every joke. I should make Tibalt F tier. He doesn't fundamentally break the story, but he is the worst part of every story. In the original Innistrad, he did not have a plot point. He literally was just going around torturing people and being a devil, and he got his ass kicked by Soren Markov in one of the most epic smackdowns in all of Magic the Gathering. Like, he didn't stand a chance. He didn't hold a candle. He got his ass destroyed by Soren Markov. And what happens? He appears again in War of the Spark, where he kind of helps out by controlling some of the devils of Rakdos, and kind of just, like, he messes with the Eternals, but he messes with everybody. So he's like, yeah, I'll point them in this direction, but I'm going to have chaos on the way. He's pure chaos. He's chaotic evil. That's it. He's the most basic chaotic evil character ever. There is no nuance to him. There is no development there. He is just, I'm crazy for the sake of being crazy. I'm evil for the sake of being evil because it is fun. That's it. In Kaldheim, he did get a little bit more development, but his development didn't come from his character. I need to tell people this. He did some cool things in Kaldheim, but that wasn't him. It was Vorinclex. If Vorinclex didn't literally seed Tibalt and plant a seed within him, Tibalt would never have done all the cool things that he did in Kaldheim. He all did that as a distraction for Vorinclex because Vorinclex planted a seed in his body and he had to do it or else he would give birth to a Phyrexian baby. You know what I'm saying? He's a D character. He just is. He's one-dimensional. He doesn't have any motivations or goals. He just appears to sow chaos. That's not a good enough thing to drive the plot forward. Like, I'm so glad that Vorinclex was there to kind of like be a threat outside of the overt threat that Tibalt was, because Tibalt was just destroying the plane for no reason. And he's never going to have a deeper reasoning outside of no reason whatsoever. And that's a cool idea for a D&D character, but it's not a cool idea as a plot device. Yeah, he's uninteresting. He's literally a hurricane he's a hurricane that a hero can beat up. You know? He's an earthquake that the hero can subdue. That's it. Alright, Tyvar Kell, a newcomer to the Planeswalker roster. He was just introduced in Kaldheim, and I think his character served really well in Kaldheim. He's a cocky elf. He was cool in Kaldheim. He brought a lot of story to Kaldheim, a lot of perspective of that world, that plane, the various realms within it, all that kind of stuff. But I really don't see a potential for him moving forward. I did like his character. I liked his banter with Kaya, and he is off in the multiverse exploring it a little bit more. He was kind of like isolationist at the beginning. He kind of evolved out of that. So he could be out there making new stories, and he could be a future Planeswalker in other stories. But hey, if we're going with solid green Planeswalkers, let's throw Garrick into as many stories as possible for my preference anyway. But Tyvar Kell, you're going to go C because you just don't have that history yet, and I'm iffy about your potential. You do have a body, though. Look at that. You got a body, dude. Alright, next, Ugin the Spirit Dragon. I am going to go up here and just slam him on S because I don't feel like scrolling all the way back down. But Ugin is clearly an S tier character in Magic the Gathering, just like his twin brother Nicol Bolas, also another famous twin in Magic the Gathering with Will and Rowan Kenrith. Ugin is one of my favorite characters. I know I say that about a lot of these characters, but sincerely, Ugin is such a cool character to me. His death, the mystery surrounding it, the mystery surrounding the Eldrazi Titans when it was first like teased on the original Zendikar and Tarkir. All that stuff was a great boiling mystery over the years for Magic the Gathering. And to see Ugin go back into, like, to see Sarkhan go back in time, resurrect Ugin as a spirit dragon, him plot against his brother Nicol Bolas and them struggling against one another, and then Ugin finally winning out over his brother and locking him away and becoming his jailer, and their fates being intertwined forever, was amazing. It was one of the best story arcs in all of Magic. You know, Ugin's one of the smartest characters in the multiverse. So Ugin, you're an S-tier dragon. I love the fact that you're colorless and you're a spirit, and just everything about your design was amazing. Urza, as represented by Urza's head. I wish that his Artificer card from Commander Legends was a Planeswalker card, but it's not, so I gotta use this card instead. He was a Planeswalker in the story canonically, so we have to go over him. Urza, guess what? You're an A. Now, before you guys all lose your minds over it, Urza is an A because he sucked as a hero. So much. Like, he was Magic Story. But he is one of the most complex characters as well. And they tried to brand him as a hero. He was never a hero, first off. People wanted him to be a hero, and people look back at him as a hero, like new players. They kind of just hear Urza and like, oh yeah, he was a great hero from old Magic, all this kind of stuff. He was not. He did a lot of messed up things. He was incredibly self-centered. He would sacrifice hundreds of thousands of lives before even thinking about finding a possible other solution to a problem. Yeah, he was insane. He caused so much wanted destruction, all in the purpose of his own goal to destroy Phyrexia, and then he was eventually corrupted by him anyway. Yeah, he gets A, mostly because he has this unfettered reputation as being the greatest hero in Magic the Gathering, when he is literally the most notorious character in Magic the Gathering's history. And the story is better the further we're removed from him as an influence. I'm not saying the story is good, because the writing's goddamn terrible. But Urza was too influential in the story, and it didn't allow characters to breathe, and he was kind of all-encompassing. I'm going to throw him an A. He deserves an A for all the bad shit he did. Alright? Alright, Venser. Alright, Venser is another deceased Planeswalker from the past. And honestly, he's one of the Planeswalkers I know the least about. I do know that he was best friends with Karn, and that Karn looks to avenge his death. I don't know a lot about him. I'll be honest. And Venser is just one of those characters I never really explored. I never really got too interested or invested in. I do know he's connected to Karn quite a bit, and I know he sacrificed his spark to make Karn uncorrupted by the Phyrexians, all that kind of stuff. Karn owes him a huge debt, and Karn's going to probably dedicate something to Venser when he goes back to Phyrexia, New Phyrexia, and blows it to hell. But he's a C to me. He has nothing to provide for the future of the story, so this is where he's gonna go. Alright guys, Vivian Reed, the replacement for Nyssa Ravine in Magic the Gathering storyline, if you are to ask Wizards of the Coast, because they loved Vivian Reed there for a little bit. She was in the Magic Core set. She frontlined a lot of different stories. Her story on Ixalan that she returned to was actually really interesting. So Vivian Reed's a weird political character, because she is like this weird animal rights activist with her arc bow, and she can like summon animals, and she really cares about them, and if you harm an animal, she'll slit your throat no matter what. But she's super polarizing at the same time. I don't know if she's going to stick around as a character. I know they pushed her hard for a little bit as kind of like being a replacement for Nyssa Ravine, but yeah, she's a C-tiered character to me. I just don't like her very much. It's a very less interesting design than Nyssa Ravine, and a way less interesting design than Garrick, in my opinion. People might like her message of like ruthlessly defending animals to maybe an unreasonable degree. I'm putting her at C because she was influential in the story for a little bit. She had a huge beef with Nicol Bolas, and that's what kind of drove her into the War of the Spark. Well, she was forced to, but it gave her a lot of context in the War of the Spark because Nicol Bolas destroyed her home world. She was on Ikoria, World of Monsters, that was fun. She was cool in Ikoria though, taking that stark contrast to Luca and how they would treat the monsters. So yeah, the PETA Planeswalker, she's going to be a C. I don't know where she's going to go from here, honestly. All right, Vraska. This is an A-tier Planeswalker. Vraska is so much fun. So much fun. Her character went through so much development and so many changes. She almost mirrors Jace in a lot of her development, and that makes sense because her and Jace were lovers. Yes. Gorgon and Jace, the telepath. Oh god, it's hard to think about. But yeah, Jace and Vraska were actually brutal enemies when they first encountered each other in Return to Ravnica. And Vraska always was plotting to take over the Golgari and start a whole bunch of ish on Ravnica. But eventually they come together on Ixalan, where Vraska is a pirate, Jace is a pirate. They settle their differences and become really, really close. Intimately close. And then they become just friends. So they shipped Vraska and Jace, and then they broke it off because having a Gorgon and their face character with each other all the time seemed kind of off for the branding, probably. That being said, that was a weird ship, and I loved Ixalan's story for it. Who knows what they're going to do in the future. I don't know what her story is going to be in the future. On Ravnica, it was sick, her finally ruling the Golgari. She's going to be the Guildmaster there. She's part of the new comic book series. She has a lot going on for her, guys. She's A tier, for sure. All right, this is Ren, the tree. I'm just going to throw it an F. It is a Planeswalker that can psychically connect and subjugate tree folk. That's it. That's it. So, yeah, enjoy F tier. You're a nothing Planeswalker to me. You're even less than the other, like, weird supplemental Planeswalkers because you're just even less interesting. I just don't get you. And finally, the last Planeswalker so far. We're going to add Nyssa and Freyalise in here in a second. Don't worry. I'm going to do it. Xenagos, the main antagonist for the original Theros block. Xenagos was a good villain. The Theros block's story was well written. I promise you guys, if you guys want to go back and read those stories, you should. They're a lot of fun, and it was really, really good. Now, Xenagos is a satyr. He's kind of evil. The Oracle said he was bound for greatness. He became a Planeswalker, and he didn't become a god for power. He became a god to spit in the face of gods, to let them know that they're not all powerful and all important, because he's a Planeswalker. He knows there's planes that exist outside the influence of the Theros gods. The Theros gods don't know that. The gods of Theros believe they're all powerful and they control everything in existence. They don't know the existence outside of their existence that Xenagos was aware of. So Xenagos was tired of their smug attitudes and showed them that he too could become a god, just to pervert what it meant to be a god. Now, we did, at the end of it all, see Elsbeth kill Xenagos. Although his death was always teased, it was never really solidified. So we thought that maybe he could have lived. But with Return to Theros Beyond Death and us exploring the underworld, Xenagos was nowhere to be seen. Nothing was written about him, really. So he is dead. For what he was, he's not going to provide much story moving forward in Magic the Gathering. He just isn't. But he provided so much depth to that storyline in Theros that alone makes me love him as a character. Alright guys, so I don't know how I missed these two before, but chat notified me that I was missing two Planeswalkers. Somehow I missed Nyssa Ravine and Freyalise, who is a Planeswalker from the Commander set. Let's go start with Freyalise first. So Freyalise is a big character in the old school lore of Magic the Gathering, on Dominaria specifically. She, again, was a huge player in the Time Spiral events, closing the rifts of Dominaria that were destroying it and could destroy the multiverse. So again, like a lot of great heroes from that ancient conflict. Freyalise sacrificed herself to save Skyshroud, her area, her elvish like forest region of Dominaria. She sacrificed her life, her spark, closed that rift, and that was her story. But again, she is a really, really strong character in the past, but doesn't really have a lot of pull for modern players and won't have much impact moving forward. She'd have a cool, nice nod in the original Dominaria. Well, the new Dominaria set, the most recent one. So, gotta pay my respects for sure. But she just doesn't have a big draw in the current story, so I'm gonna put her at C. You know, she's like what, like these old school planeswalkers, except for Sarah, Lord Wingrace, Tevis Vats, Venzer. You know, they're all going to be C, in my opinion. So, there you go. And with that, our final planeswalker, which I should have done earlier in alphabetical order, but I had missed her, and I don't know how. One of the OG planeswalkers in the Gatewatch, Nyssa Ravine, a character with a very complex history and past. So Nyssa Ravine started off as a very interesting character, an elf who was elf supremacist, essentially. She was very racist towards anything not elvish. She believed elves were the kings of Zendikar, everything else was below her, and she was like a complete ass to everybody, and she did not live up to what we would believe as the normal nature-loving elf that Nyssa Ravine has become in modern story, modern Magic the Gathering. She's kind of bucked that. She had a love interest in Chandra Nalar, but Wizard of the Coast recanted it and then said it was real, and then it's not real again, so it's weird. Nyssa, Chandra shipping. Nyssa, though, is a really complex character because she's not emotional. She's like the complete antithesis to Chandra Nalar, you know? While Chandra Nalar is guided by passion and recklessness almost, Nyssa is calm and steady and emotionless, almost to a fault. So both of those characters really played off of each other well. They may have been a little too different from one another to kind of like wedge into a story as a love interest. Like they were fundamentally different characters with different ideologies, and they basically just had a connection because of the power they fed off of each other almost. You know, the connection came when Nyssa funneled in mana from Zendikar into Chandra to burn down the Eldrazi Titans, you know, and that kind of like that connection was strong enough for them to seek each other out romantically. And while that never really came to fruition and it never was explored further, people in the fan base would not stop shipping Nyssa and Chandra. Now, out of all the original Gatewatch members, Nyssa is the character who I believe is the least impactful in the story. She has been shunned in the Magic story for a while now. She quit the Gatewatch. She inadvertently released the Eldrazi Titans originally on Zendikar. She was been used a lot as a plot point for the Magic story, but not always for good. She really wanted to defend Zendikar, but after the Eldrazi were kind of dealt with, it felt like Nyssa's story kind of came to an end. Her whole story was wrapped around the Eldrazi Titans and defending Zendikar, and was so isolationist almost that when we're not on Zendikar, it doesn't feel like she's doing anything. She was able to return to Zendikar and Zendikar Rising and really help defend her playing there. But again, that didn't really add much to her development as a character. In fact, it didn't seem to add much at all, unfortunately. So she's going to be sticking around. She's going to stick around in the story. She may even come back to the Gatewatch. But as for right now, I'm going to say she's one of the OG Gatewatch members that's going to be an A, not an S. This is where I would put the list at, guys. Now, agree with me, disagree with me. You know, let me know in the comment section below. Let me know what you guys feel. Again, streaming this live on YouTube, so if you guys want to catch my next tier list that I make and argue with me in real life, you can go ahead and hit that subscribe button and a notification bell and join the chat. If you guys want to make your own tier list, we'll be able to save this on tiermaker.com. Hopefully you guys can be able to find out. I'll leave a link in the description below. You guys can take a screenshot of your tier list and where you put your rankings. You can tweet it at me at SimonLore, or just throw it in my face when the next time I stream. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining me tonight, and until next time, guys, see ya!